Could we draw aside the thick veil that hides the future from us, we might perhaps behold our great seaport swelling into a metropolis in size and importance, its suburbs creeping out to an undreamt of distance from its centre. Or we might, reversing the picture, behold Liverpool by some unthought-of calamity, some fatal, unforeseen mischance, dwindled down to its former insignificance, its docks shipless, its warehouses in ruins, its streets grass-grown. Under which of these two fates will Liverpool find its lot some centuries hence? Which of these two pictures will it then present? Be it one or the other, the strange undertakings of Joseph Williamson will perhaps, some centuries from now, be brought again to light and excite as much marvel and inquiry as any mysterious building of old, the purpose of which we do not understand and the use of which we cannot now account for.
The area of Edge Hill sits on a sandstone plateau overlooking Liverpool city centre. Once the neighbourhood of rich merchants, it's now a typical inner city area. Yet it holds the secret to one of the greatest stories of Liverpool's past, the legend of the Mole of Edge Hill, Joseph Williamson, who was reputed to have constructed miles of tunnels and caverns in the soft sandstone rock, seemingly without purpose.
I got involved through my colleague at that time, Bill Douglas. I don't work with him now, but I did then. And we used to do the odd day when we did photographs in Liverpool for a competition that we were running in work. And this particular day, it was a filthy afternoon, in the winter, dark, and he suddenly said, "We're on Smithdown Lane, I must go and have a look at where these tunnels are. I won't be long." And he left me in the car and disappeared. 40 minutes later he came back with a beam that you could tie round his ears. "I found them, I've been in, and it is fantastic." And there it started.
Of course, that was closely followed by a bit of a protest that was going on one part of the tunnel site, organised by some people who thought that who shared my interest in the tunnels and thought that they might be under threat from a building development. So I went along to that, met up with these couple of people, and within a few weeks we'd formed Friends of Williamson's Tunnels, and that was back in late '96, and here we are now, much bigger and more active organisation.
I personally got started when I heard about the tunnels and it was under threat of development. About the same time, the old fruit depot on the corner of FoWT Road and Tunnel Road had just been knocked down. It's an ornate facade, unique to the area, and it disappeared overnight. I wrote a letter to the council saying about it, and we got no reply back, and I thought the tunnels would probably go the same way. So we tried to form a pressure group.
Everybody knew the tunnels were here. Nobody worried much about them because at the time they were safe. But the alarm bells did start ringing when they closed the stables, and of course we had to form a society in order to try and get some weight and get some power behind us to sort of protect the tunnels that are left. I didn't know about the Friends in the early part of the months. I was going around on my own and just checking everything, and then I happened to bump into one or two of the lads and they were involved with it, and then I just become caught up in it then. That's how I got involved with Friends.
The story begins around 1780, when the young Joseph Williamson came to Liverpool to seek his fortune. He was taken on by the wealthy Tate family, who ran a tobacco business in Wolstenholme Square. Over the years, Williamson became a great success, rising through the company and eventually merging it with his own merchant business, making such a fortune that he was able to retire in 1818. By then, he'd married the Tate's daughter, Elizabeth, in 1802. It was shortly after this that the fun began. Williamson was an extremely rich man by the early 1800s, and he began buying and leasing land on the rocky outcrop of Edge Hill, at this time a rural village on the outskirts of Liverpool. He was particularly interested in Mason Street, a country lane sporting half a dozen houses and a few old sandstone quarries. With his sights on a supplementary career as a landlord and a desire to establish a neighbourhood for the gentry, Williamson began building houses on Mason Street. Houses with huge arches at the rear to support fashionable walled gardens for his tenants. Then an arch within an arch. Then a passage linking to a cellar. Then an extra basement.
Between 1803 and 1840, it was definitely a des-res suburb. People wanted to live up here, away from the smoke and the grime and the terrible overcrowding that there was in downtown Liverpool, a couple of miles away. It had its wonderful views out over the city. You could look out. If you were a ship owner, you could watch your ships coming in and out of the bay if you had your telescope perched in the bedroom, and they would always be able to watch the changing views of the Welsh hills. So it was very nice up here indeed. It's only after Williamson's time that it really became a completely different area.
Back then in late 96, the tunnel site was very different. Really, although there are three parts to the tunnel site today, Paddington, the house and the stables, there were only two then, because it was only in 99 that we discovered this section of Paddington where we are now. So the stables site, for example, that was very different. All the stables were still standing. It was quite an adventure to actually get inside there and see the tunnels in the flesh. The odd fence had to be clambered over and gap-in walls squeezed between. If you think in terms of the double tunnel and the corner tunnel, they were hidden away behind trees and bushes. The house, which now has been cleared up a lot of the old garage that used to stand there has been demolished. That as well was difficult to get into. It was a bit of a secret adventure to actually get in there. And it was a real old wreck of a place.
Very cautiously, we squeeze ourselves into the lower part of this great slit in the dripping rock and go slithering sideways down the narrow gully. At one time, probably, there were steps cut into the rock, but it is now just a sopping, muddy declivity. The passage gradually widens and becomes more lofty until we are tipped out into a towering cavern, blacker and more awesome than anything yet. Our lights show us a sort of goblin hall, about 80 feet long by 40 feet high, varying in width from 15 feet to 30 feet. The vault is hewn out of the virgin rock, and it has an arched roof of brick of most masterly construction. The far end has been almost entirely blocked by a great heap of stones and rubbish.
There was a development proposed to build houses on the stableyard site, the old Lord Mayor's stableyard site on the corner of Smithdown Lane and Grinfield Street. And We knew that there were tunnels underneath there. Anybody who'd read any of these old books knew that there were tunnels in the area, and indeed if you went into the Lord Mayor's stable yard you could see a couple of them, as you can to this day. And we thought, hang on, building flats on top of these delicate structures might damage them. And so there was quite a movement got together of people thinking, we've got to stop this, or at least have it amended in such a way that the tunnels can be safe.
Of course, once Williamson died in 1840, the stable yards were built about 1867 for the cart horses and the collection of rubbish from the city centre. It's a unique site in itself, and it's the last set of large stables in Liverpool from this era. And why not save them? Why preserve them? And we've got so much tunnel system underneath, and they go hand in hand. It's not just me, it's a lot of people are really interested in this system. And I think we've all got really interested because our own sixth sense that we know there's a lot of tunnels in this system. We know it's unique, all the tunnels are different, all the arches are different, every tunnel part of the system is different in its own way. And because it is a labyrinth and you can get from A to B in different ways, we know it can be a real tourist attraction for Liverpool.
Edge Hill, world famous locality, and what I've seen today and yesterday is absolutely fantastic. Liverpool and Manchester Railway is all here, one of the very first railways in the world, and Williamson's tunnels. Now, you know, the potential here with the stables is really quite something. I've looked at tunnels, tourist tunnels open in all sorts of places in Europe, and you know, there's more variety, there's more potential here than I've seen at, say, Philippeville in Belgium, which is very standard, very monotonous set of tunnels really. Here you've got the variety, you've got sandstone, some beautiful work in sandstone underground, some beautiful brickwork. It beats them hollow. This chap Williamson has bricked that up and you know, tunnelled there, tunnelled off there. I mean, if you dig all the stuff out, it'll still be full of mystery, I'm sure. And that's half the allure of the place.
There you had a developer looking to build new houses on top of the tunnels, on one section of the tunnels. You had ourselves objecting to the possibility that some of the tunnels might be damaged. And indeed there were other supporters of the tunnels, another society, the Joseph Williamson Society, who'd aligned themselves with that developer. They had more confidence that the tunnels wouldn't be damaged. And so it was a time of some conflict, and it was difficult to get people to listen. You know, the city fathers or whatever, they'd sold the land, so in some senses their interest in the site was closed. So it was quite a struggle to make our voices heard.
Demonstrations of Williamson's eccentricity were only too frequent. On one occasion, he invited a number of Liverpool worthies to dinner. He solemnly led his guests to sit down at plain trestle tables and a poor man's meal of beans. Most took offence and left in indignation. To those who remained, Williamson said, "Now I know who my real friends are," and led them to another room where a banquet fit for a king was waiting. When the pioneering railway tunnel to Lime Street was being dug in the 1830s, little did Chief Engineer George Stephenson realise that it would cross over Williamson's tunnels. When it did, it said that Williamson himself appeared from under the ground to challenge the navvies working there that If they wanted to know about tunnelling, he could give them a lesson in that polite art.
In the eastern face of the quarry, there is an immense arch, perhaps 60 feet high, and about 30 feet from its entrance, there is an immense and massive stone pier from which spring 2 arches on either side, one above the other, but not from the same level. The pier is hollowed on the inside by 3 arches. On the left-hand wall, inside the arch, there are 2 large arches from which vaults run northwardly, and on the right-hand side of the wall, there are also 2 vaults, which extend to a great distance in a southerly direction towards Grinfield Street. From these vaults, other vaults branch off in all sorts of directions. The houses in Maidstone Street all rest upon these arches, and as you passed along the street, the depth of some of them at one time was visible through the grids. The construction of these arches is of the most solid description and seems stable as the earth itself.
No map or plan of the tunnels from Williamson's time has ever been found. The nearest thing that survives to this day is a sketch drawn by local historian James Stonehouse when he explored the tunnels just 5 years after Williamson died. The reason behind the labyrinth is also shrouded in mystery, as the tunnels themselves seem at first to serve no purpose. Legend has it that Williamson made his excavations in order to give work to the large numbers of unemployed following the Napoleonic Wars. At one time he was said to employ half the labouring population of Edge Hill, who gratefully christened him the King of Edge Hill. Williamson was a complicated man, however. A modern research suggests that there may have been more to his motives than pure benevolence.
Well, the nearest thing to an official map that we have is that from James Stonehouse, which was done just after Williamson's death. Stonehouse wrote in 1845, 5 years after Williamson died. And that's the nearest thing we have. Beyond that, we have a great collection of tales, stories, reminiscences, little snippets, which all go to make an indication that these tunnels went a long way, that they were very ramified, very varied as well, in size and depth and so on, beneath this hillside in Edge Hill.
He'd cut down into the quarries and then he's vaulted over them, either in solid sandstone or in natural brick arches. And to do this, he's actually put timber formers in, where he's actually put the timber in from one side of the quarry to the other, and he's formed the arches and bricked over them, either in sandstone or brickwork. And then from there, he's bought other areas around the other sites and actually quarried again to immense depths. Sometimes he's put 3 or 4 story cellar systems in, and then from there he's actually dug in tunnel systems back into the other parts that he's already done, and this spans over 35 years. So all these quarries act as road junctions to the other parts of the systems. So you've got a large quarry and you've got lots of tunnels running off them into different areas of the tunnel system. So it is an actual labyrinth of tunnels.
In Georgian times, houses quite often had 2 layers of cellars anyway. You had a working cellar, which quite often contained the kitchen and the range. Below that was a level where wastewater went, the oubliette, so to speak. They hoped they wouldn't have to clean that out ever. And I think Williamson went below that to the next level down again.
Problem is the backfill, the rubble and the spoil that's been tipped down here. Even from the day Williamson died, they started to backfill these tunnels. Victorian flight tipping, I suppose you can call that. And over the last 150 years, this is what we've got to contend with on excavating and getting out in whatever system or procedure that we can manage to do it the cheapest possible way. We are a total self-funding organisation, and if it wasn't for our members, we wouldn't be able to do this sort of thing. Simply, in other words, our members are our backbone.
Right from the day Williamson died in 1840, people began pouring rubbish into the tunnels and blocking them off. Over the decades, they faded from public memory and became the stuff of legend. Until recent years, when the efforts of enthusiasts have brought the heritage potential of the remaining tunnels into sharp focus.
We were looking at ways to communicate with people, and I just happened to have a bit of a professional interest in computers, and so had the means at my disposal to actually put together a small website for us.
We've got a website which has many, many thousands of hits, and nobody's come on there and said, oh, it's just like. It's not like anything else anywhere.
In there is a thing we call a guest book, where people who've looked at the site can leave a message saying what they think of it and what they think of the tunnels. And that's packed now, that's got hundreds of messages in it. From all over the world, in fact, some of them are in foreign languages, which makes it a bit difficult. But yeah, people will say, oh, loved this website, never been able to find any other information about the tunnels, and some say they'd never heard of them until they stumbled across the website. So that's very satisfying for us as an educational charity.
We have well over 1,000 active members in our group because we opened our doors to general membership, and they are doing their little bit as well to spread the word that there's something very, very unusual in Liverpool that's worth going to see. Certainly we know that there are tunnels underlying the area that stretches from St Mary's Church as far as Grinfield Street, and then in the other right angles to that, so to speak, from at least Kingslake Street all the way down to Smithdown Lane. So it's getting on for half a mile in either direction there.
Well, one of the most important parts of FoWT, of our activities, is some of our people constantly looking for where the new tunnels might be, or the tunnels that we haven't seen yet.
If there's been a tunnel there, then it'll be steps going down, won't it? Yeah. To that end. You know, so, and the steps would start, well, they start here really, because that's the, this has been a room, it's been plastered.
If this was steps here, then how would you get your coal out? You know, you've got to keep to your level. There might have been flags here originally if someone's whipped them up.
With it being brass, I had a brass copper, it's for the outside, so must have been on the seats. Yeah.
Steve? Yeah? Did you see my torchlight through the other side there by that opening?
No, I'll give you that.
Yeah, nice. We're going back out or what? Yeah. Not much else now, is there?
In the summer of 1999, the Friends of Williamson's Tunnels organised a prestigious weekend conference for the organisation Subterranea Britannica. Enthusiasts from home and abroad descended upon Liverpool to be treated to tours of many of the most striking underground structures in the city.
Just pause to listen to how this room might have sounded at the height of operations. The Central Operations or Royal Navy Map Room was perhaps the most important room in the combined headquarters. Every scrap of collected information passed through this room at one time or another, and this information was relayed here both by telephone and messengers who were dispatched from the radio rooms, the telephone exchange, the teleprinter and decoding stations.
Two shafts were dug vertically down from this site here and over at Morpeth Dock in Birkenhead. And the calculations were good to the extent that they were only half an inch apart. There was only half an inch of divergence when they actually met together. And for the pains, I think if I remember rightly, they removed something like 1.2 million tonnes of rock. And that was replaced with around 80,000 tonnes of cast iron segments and 270,000 tonnes of concrete.
There's nothing here.
Joined up with the doctor earlier.
This is 1953, this one. Yeah, that's. I mean, this is the sort of thing the guy brings a car in for repair, and we can't get the bits for it. It's only that night. We can't afford to repair it. And the next thing you know, we don't see him for 20 years.
Yeah.
That's the problem with having all space, you see. Because there's a few of them.
And you're not having them removed, these cars?
Not just yet.
Meanwhile, the Edgehill area continued to be altered and redeveloped, with not only the work around the stableyard site, but also demolition of the old garage on the site of Williamson's house, and work to build student flats on the site of the old Paddington Gardens tenement blocks.
Once they had actually knocked the flats down, we actually, through the National Museums and Galleries, we actually got a watching brief to watch over anything that was uncovered on the site. One of the first cellars we come across the site when we actually dug it down to ground level was what we interpreted as a cellar dwelling. It was 2 stories deep, 1 cellar upon a cellar, fireplaces on one corner, a nice coal chute on one of the other ends, with a nice sandstone staircase going into the middle of the room, which was very unusual. We didn't find any tunnels from the bottom cellar system because it was in such a dangerous condition. We could only go down to take a few photographs and we had to come back up. Then it was covered over when the development was getting done above ground, when the foundations were going in.
When that came under the demolition order, we paid particular attention to how they were being knocked down. We had watching briefs there all through that winter. We all took a share of standing over this area, over the Paddington, in the hope that something may be uncovered that we can investigate. Watkin Jones, who were the builders, they were very good. They allowed us on for 1 day's dig.
Yeah.
So we arranged the dig for that Saturday morning. Won't forget it, never forget it. And as the dig was progressing, we become a little bit more apprehensive. And the blood pressure was building up and the anxiety was growing. So we got down to the bottom of the first area of the cellar.
1, 2, 3.
Up. We don't think there's anything below that.
No way. I wouldn't expect it.
We were looking for a hole in the floor, the size of a front door, in the area of a football pitch, or half a football pitch. We're going further away. I feel we're going further away. And then we asked the JCB driver just to drag a little bit away, which he did do. And lo and behold, the corner of the bucket caught the corner of an arch and broke away the arch, and there it was right in front of us.
Oh, we're in! We're in! We're in! Yeah? Right, girls, use the ladder.
We lifted up the sandstone flags and we actually poked a hole through into the floor and into the cellar system, into an arch, and we actually found the Williamson's tunnels. We'd found tunnels that had been lost since 1937, and it was just a fantastic day.
Les, so is it the same what you plan up here or what you got down there? It looks bigger down there? Oh, that's great, that.
I wasn't able to get here until later in the day, and I came along and saw a big crater in the ground with just one of our chaps standing fairly forlornly peering down into it. And I walked over and said, "Oh, hiya, John." Didn't find anything then because I didn't really hold out any hope. It was just a speculative thing. I said, "Has everyone gone home?" And he said, "No, they're all down there," and pointed to a hole in the bottom of this crater. And I realised that they'd actually found the tunnels, this missing section of the tunnels. And sure enough, climbed down a ladder and everybody was milling around in here. It looked slightly different in those days, but incredibly, the digger had actually pulled a stone to one side and broken through into this long lost section.
Bill? Bill? You want to see the sandstone here? It's all dead freshly carved. Just looks brand new. And yet you're talking about 1829, 30.
Straight away, coming down in here, we saw the hallmarks of Williamson, the telltale shapes of the arches, the sandstone blocks with his signature pattern carved into them.
It was a combination of work with me and Les and the rest of the group over months to really find out what was here.
We didn't come down for 2 days. We were 2 foot above the ground for 2 days. We never came down. We were so elated. We told the world and the Sundridge to come and see what we found here. And the exuberance really spread through the society. And we were so pleased to find this. We were pleased for the members, because again, it's they who support us. And we're pleased for those. And once we got it cleared enough, they were the first to go down, and they were the first to see what was down there.
Armed with electric torches, acetylene lamps and candles, we descended with infinite care the stone steps leading into the very bowels of the earth. At the bottom of the first flight, an archway, cut out of the moist and musty rock, led away to the right, and the next flight branched away on either hand, giving access to low tunnels and more steps down. A tremendous amount of labour must have been expended on this burrowing, and especially on the vaults to which the low passages conducted. The roofs are supported by groined arches of perfect workmanship, but their design is without set idea, and all appear to be entirely useless. We groped our way carefully along the accessible ramifications of these crypts to the depth of 3 stories below the street level. There are 3 or more stories below these. The basement is said to be as deep as the buildings are high, but accumulations of rubbish deposited here by generations of builders remodelling the premises for various uses have choked up the lowest catacombs. We failed to discover a boundary. We were in a nightmare maze of constructed tunnels and caves. Nobody knows their extent.
We're putting steel shutters at the top end so we can actually get a ladder down or proper steps once we've finished the floor level. The brickwork, the arches, everything's in perfect condition from about 1820, and we're down at least 3 stories at the moment. There's probably another story below that, maybe another 2 below that, and they all reach back into the build. They all reach back into onto the site itself, back into the caverns that we've uncovered, which were filled in 1937, and we've got no access to, which is a real shame.
Tom's got it. Just there, Tom.
This is the first arch built since 1840.
All yours. That's it, Steve. You can get that up, mate. You got the room.
We've had a constant flow of work. We've cleared footways, walkways, pulled rubble to the side, although we can't actually get it out yet. In one corner, we did find an area that, for want of a better word, looked like an egg timer, the remains of what was an egg timer, and part had fallen in, and we'd done a dig there. We dug down roughly 18 feet, going down, putting shuttering up and battening out and balking out, making stanchions, making it safe against the walls and knocking all sorts of balks in. Then when we got down to about, well, something like 18 foot, we became a bit frightened. It was the wrong time to keep digging here. So before we came out, we sent a mild steel probe, 1/2-inch mild steel probe. We pushed it down 10 foot and lost it. Recovered it, brought it back up, got a 15-foot one, pushed that one down and lost that. Then we got a 20-foot probe, we pushed that down after a few attempts, and we think we've hit the floor. When we think we've hit the floor, we had about 3 foot or 2 foot of that pole showing from the bottom of the pit or the trench we'd dug. So when we added all that together, what we were looking at basically was an area some 40 foot deep or high, 8 foot wide and about 30, 40 foot long. So we do have something down there of cathedral proportions. Let's hope we can get it out soon. Difficult to explain the features till we go down. I mean, once we're down here into this underground world, this marvellous underground world, it's difficult to explain it. All you've got to do is really look at it. And that's why, as a group, we are trying to get as many people down here as possible to see these works. Can you see at the top? The very, very top.
Yeah.
Just up there, see how fresh that looks?
Yeah.
So because we took him on the stairway there, we have to take him on the stairway here.
Oh.
Yeah. So he was really, he was quite gay, he was quite agile for his age, he'd done well, yeah, done very well.
And a hole appeared and a face blackened appeared from below.
That's in this book.
Whereupon the navvies in Stevenson's
Dropped
tunnel
stones.
dropped and ran.
Yeah.
Now I find that one very, very hard to believe, a hard-nosed navvy running from anything. And when I come down in here, in this Paddington, I feel very strongly that wherever we go under the ground, there's a definite sort of sense of a presence. And it does seem to affect everybody that comes down. Everybody is sort of fascinated and wants to know more. I'm sure that he's left his mark here so strongly that you can still sense it.
Currently, the Joseph Williamson Society is renovating 2 of the tunnels on the Stableyard site in order to open them to tourists. Meanwhile, the Friends of Williamson's tunnels intend to clear out the caverns on the Paddington site. The site of Williamson's house is owned by Liverpool City Council and has great potential for future development.
A lot of people are slightly surprised and confused when they hear that there are 2 groups involved with the campaign to save the tunnels. I think the reasons for the existence of 2 groups are historical, and I think possibly have been superseded by events in recent years. Really, there was a group which aligned itself to the housing development down on the Stables site, because that housing development offered an opportunity for 2 of the tunnels there on that site to be renovated. We, on the other hand, formed Friends of Williamson's Tunnels on the basis that that development posed some risk to other tunnels which weren't so obvious as the 2 tunnels that were going to be saved, that were hidden underground, that we understood might exist according to historical records. And so really 2 camps came into play: the Joseph Williamson Society and ourselves, Friends of Williamson's Tunnels.
It was decided that we need to pull on the same rope. So ourselves and the JWS got together, talked out a strategy, brought it back to our respective meetings, thrashed out there. It was agreed that, yeah, the way forward is to run together. And it's happened, and the way it's happening now, it's working. I desperately hope that it does carry on working in this way. I think it will work. I really think we can make a go of this. And with the JWS, it doubles the strength of the power, of the draw, of the tourism for Joseph Williamson's tunnels.
These 3 main sites at the moment could form the nucleus of a much bigger Williamson experience.
So we tend to think in terms of those 3 sites as being the junction boxes, if you like. The task for us now, and the thing that keeps us going, is opening up the passages that link the 3 sites together.
I mean, even in this section now, we call this the wine bins, but the amount of work, there's tunnels, we're only 15 foot down into the system, and yet we've got tunnels running off in different areas. Some are blocked up, some are open, and there's a lot of tunnel systems even 15 foot down, and we know below here we've got the banqueting hall, and we've got other tunnels running off from there.
And people will ideally be able to walk from one end of the tunnel site to the other, weaving the way around, up and down between different levels as well. And we'll have a whole Williamson experience where people can see every bit that's left to this day of the Williamson tunnels in the flesh, won't that be something to look forward to?
This is an integral part of Liverpool's history. When you hear the story of Williamson, how he came from Warrington when he was a lad, etc., got a job here in Liverpool and rose to actually run the company and eventually have the company as his own. He did pour all his money back into the community. I mean, £100,000 over 20, 25 years of tunnelling, and which is worth something like now 20 odd million in today's terms. You've got to say something for this gentleman. There's the name behind. There are tunnels in Liverpool. Liverpool's a honeycomb of tunnels. This one is so special in its own way because there's a name behind it and there's a story behind it, and it just takes our interest, and we feel that this should be rescued from the bulldozer at any cost whatsoever.
A strange place it is. Vaulted passages cut out of the solid rock. Arches thrown up by craftsmen's hands, beautiful in proportion and elegant in form, but supporting nothing. Tunnels formed here, deep pits there. Yawning gulfs where the fetid, stagnant waters threw up their baneful odours. Here, the work is finished off, as if the mason had laboured with consummate skill to complete his work, so that all the world might see and admire, although no human eyes save those of the masters would ever be set upon it. Here lies the ponderous stone as it fell, after the upheaving blast had dislodged it from its bed. And there, vaulted over, is a gulf that makes the brain dizzy and strikes us with terror as we look down into it. Now we see an arch, fit to bridge a mountain torrent, and in another step or two we meet another, only fit to span a simple brook. Tiers of passages are met with, as dangerous to enter as they are strange to look at.
Mm-hmm.